Okay, the arbiter of all good things has given us one more question. I hope it's a really important one. No pressure.
For anybody here who was at the Cure Shank Symposium in Boston, they'll know that there were three sections where there was a last question, and somehow I ended up with all of them. But I'm a dad of a 14-year-old girl with a rare disorder called Phelan-McDermid syndrome. And it took us about 5 years to get a diagnosis for her because she's got a point mutation, so it didn't show up on a microarray. I'm also from Toronto, so it's a different system. But from everything I've heard here, I would really urge everyone to think about, and Jeffrey, you as well, to think about what actionable means in terms of getting a diagnosis, because Phelan-McDermid syndrome currently has no treatment. Rett syndrome, STI, there are so many that have no treatments, but the reason that there's going to be a gene therapy trial starting in 2025 is because we were able to coalesce as a group, because until we got my daughter's diagnosis, we were a burden on the system. So you have to think about that as well, right? There's a cost to not knowing. And visiting, just like you said, like you've got your patients that you would really love to know the underlying factor. But for parents who don't get an answer, they have to go from one specialist to another to another. So there's a huge cost to the system there. In addition, obviously, to the cost to the family of not knowing. So I think that's kind of underappreciated by a lot of what I've heard. Like, I was really happy to hear that Baby Seek was actually looking at the full panel, not just what's actionable, because there's so much more there for the patients. And you're talking about equity. For that information is power for anybody who gets it. What they decide to do with it, you're going to have everything from parents who have no idea what to do with it to parents who everybody here knows will not stop until they find an answer. And that information, regardless of whether there's a treatment, an actionable treatment, it allows them to find out other groups of people, allows them to belong to that group and find answers in their communities where there are no answers in the medical communities. And the medical communities learn from there. And the drug companies look to those communities to build natural history studies on their own and to fund all these things on their own. And Rett syndrome is also a perfect example. I mean, if they didn't find each other, we wouldn't be here today.
Thank you. I agree with you entirely. Absolutely agree with you. And I have many families who've said to me, this transformed my life when I had a diagnosis. You are absolutely right. And keep in mind, this is the difference between a clinical test and a public health mandated screening test. And that's the distinction I've tried to make, but I agree with you entirely. For some people, knowing is really important. And we don't take enough into account when we talk about clinical utility, the sort of personal utility to families. And let me just end by saying that this is, well, I didn't take a position at the beginning with a number, is because I think what we are supposed to do in public policy is have policies that reflect society's values and preferences. And the NASEM committee right now that's looking at how to think about newborn screening over the next 10 and 15 years is trying to do that and get broad participation from across the country, various stakeholders, and give us some sense to way move forward. It is then incumbent upon us to try to say, okay, this is what our values and preferences are as a society, and we should move forward in this way. Might be very different from Greece, might be very different from Great Britain, might be from very different places. And that's our job in public policy, is to follow what people are telling us.
With that, thank you so much. Audience is the MVP.
Thank you. Thank you, Stephen, Hans, Walt, Amy, and Jeff. And thank you, Ronan, for that amazing last question or statement. Sometimes you got to make an executive call. We were way over, but it seemed like people are super engaged with this topic. So I'm really glad that we were able to pull that together. And thank you, Stephen, for leading that conversation. Thank you.